The following is a production of Medfield TV.
Hello and welcome to a discussion with, I'm Brett Poirier, and I have a special guest with us today. He's a veteran, a poet, he does a little bit of everything. I have Patrick Conneely here with me. He's been on Medfield TV before, and welcome back.
Well, thank you, Brett. Thank you.
Absolutely. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about kind of your life of getting to this point, and then we can talk about some of these beautiful poems that you have written. But you started out, you were in Ireland, and you became a merchant marine. So can you tell me a little bit about that story?
My career started at sea. I came from a long line of mariners. And World War II, in 1939, war was declared by Churchill. At the time that the war was declared, Churchill wanted the Irish ports, the southern ports. Now that we were at war, we demand the Irish ports. And he didn't say it in a nice way. He said, we will give you 24 hours to hand over the southern ports of the Irish Republic, or we will blow you off the face of the earth. I was a little boy. I'm listening to this on what we call the wireless, which later on became the radio. And it was scary to hear this man threatening to just wipe us off the face of the earth. And our president, who was born in New York, an Irish his parents were of Irish and Spanish descent. I'm sorry, I had a kind of
that's all right.
a senior moment there.
Yeah.
De Valera was our president who had fought the British and became president of Ireland. The true democracy in Ireland at the time and to this day, our first president was not Catholic. He was a Presbyterian, a Protestant. Some of our greatest patriots were of the Protestant faith. Our first Lord Mayor, after we got rid of the British, was Jewish, Briscoe. As a matter of fact, his son to this day is in Parliament in Ireland. Anyhow, all this was going on, and our president said, if you threaten to blow us off the face of the earth, I would advise you to look to your right and look to your left and see who's in your British Army, your Navy, and your Merchant Marine. And you're giving us 24 hours. Mr. Churchill, remember 1916 and 1920? And we will have 1916 and 1920. After all, we are still occupied by your country. In the north of Ireland, the British flag still flies. And you have 2.5 million people squeezed into the corner of Ireland as second-class citizens. I would advise you to think about blowing us off the face of the earth, and Churchill backed off. But he made out, because thousands of our young men and women went into the British forces. We kids had to take up the slack. If you were from a farming country, you worked on the farms. If you were seafaring, you worked on the trawlers. And this is where I came in. At 10 years old, my job was coiling down the Torn Warp, a big warp 6 inches around of Manila. My job was to bring that hawser through the spurling pipe into the hold and coil it clockwise. And I always remember that cold water coming down my armpits. And that was the beginning of my career as a seafaring man.
And so 10 years old, you start your career there. You've always been seafaring. I mean, you're known as the Irish skipper now. And so what do you do now on boats? How involved is the water in your life now?
All my children, from once they were babies or barely able to walk, went to sea. And they were looking at a video of a wedding, and they're coming up the aisle, and they're all walking left to right or port to starboard, and they were all laughing, and it says, my 4 daughters, we can't blame our dad for that. He was taking us out on boats, and we developed an Atlantic roll, so that they all walked with a seafaring walk. And to this day, my daughter Kathy has a boat called The Galway Girl, and that was called after her mother, who was a Galway girl.
So the other thing is, so now you've written all these poems. Each one kind of has a story to them. What are the types of things that inspire you to write? What types of moments are like the aha moments for you?
Well, I didn't know it, but I come from a long line of poets. And we went to a wedding in England some years ago, and when we came back late at night, we opened our front door in Plymouth, and the water came out to meet us. There was a leak for 3 weeks, and the house was unlivable. So we moved aboard our boat, and we stayed on the boat from July 28th to October 10th, when we moved back on the boat. And the devastation of the whole thing. But to answer your question again,
is what inspires you to write? What you know, you have a lot of different topics in your books, and
what happened was I found this tube. I used to keep my charts for navigation and piloting and troops, and I found the tube and it wasn't marked, and I opened it up. And I rolled out this beautiful map of Ireland, the ancient, with all kinds of emblems of Ireland on it. And it said, Conneely, son of a poet. And I said, that's where I get these poems from. But the inspirations had always been with me. I can't explain it. It was within me, and it just blossomed. And the 2 most important poems in my life, or 3 actually, the 2 of them was, my wife, before she died of cancer, asked me if I would write her something. I said, like what? She said, you were always going away on the ships and on the commercial fishing. You never said goodbye. You always said, so long, Winnie, for now. It was always so long, never goodbye. She said, our goodbye is coming up. The oncologist said, I only got 4 to 6 weeks to live. Could you write me something? I'm looking at this beautiful Irish girl, cancer in the spine and in the lungs. The oncologist said, you only got 4 to 6 weeks. You think you could write a poem in 4 to 6 weeks for me? I said, let me see what I can do. She said, you're always writing for people. Now I'm asking you to write something for me. So I thought about it, and I thought about the little boy in Ireland with my window open and listening to the Bowie Moor, which was called a big whistle, at nighttime, ooh. And I thought about it. I thought of me going away at sea. I thought of saying, so long, Winnie, for now. And I sat and I wrote The Sailor Boy. Not alone did I write the poem, The Sailor Boy, I put my own music to it. I put my own ear to it. I put the sound of the wind and the ocean in the background. I went to a studio in Newton, a friend of mine had, and we put everything together. By the way, I used to sing tenor in a choir, and I sang it to my own music, and my daughter Kathy wants me to go public with it. And would you like me to recite it for you?
Absolutely.
I was born the son of a seafaring man and was destined to follow the sea. At night, as I lay on my pillow, the wind used to whisper to me, "Go to sleep, little lad, go to sleep, and dream of tall ships and the tide, for soon you must go where the stormy winds blow, and the sea you shall take for your bride." So I sailed far away from old Galway Bay, south to Cape Horn and Peru, where we weathered some gales and we heard some salt tales from Galway to Fu Manchu. Now he becomes an old man. Now the years they have fled, since the sea I have wed, and the wind softly whispers to me, "Go to sleep, old man, go to sleep, and dream of that distant shore, where your days are all true, sailing on the blue, with shipmates forevermore." And that's the sailor boy. When he learned to sing it, and she used to sing it every night till she went into a coma and died. The night nurse told me she sings that song every night. The oncologist heard it, and he said, "Patrick, if you don't do something with that, you're crazy. That is so beautiful."
It's
and
a beautiful
maybe
song.
we might go public with it.
It's beautiful. Which you've kind of become slightly famous. I shouldn't say slightly famous. It's pretty famous. You've handed me two things here. So one is we have this board with this picture in the middle of it. Tell me a little bit about the picture here and what's the story behind this?
This picture was taken by my sister Rita, who lives now in Coventry, England. And that picture is of me in the Sea Scouts uniform. All the Sea Scouts, most of them went into the Merchant Marine. One of them became a movie actor with John Wayne in a movie called The Quiet Man. And one became mayor of the city. They all did very well in life for themselves. And my sister one day took that picture before I went into the Merchant Marine. And it's now at the entrance to the City Museum in Galway. As you approach the building, you will see this picture. It says Ishka Baha. Ishka is water in the Irish language, and but Baha actually is whiskey. And it's the water of life. And I was very proud to see that in the museum and in some of the marinas there.
Well, when you first showed this to me, my first reaction was, people nowadays just don't have pictures like that. That style, the look of that, it's an iconic photo to have of you. How old were you in this picture?
14 years old.
14 years old.
And I look older because I had mileage behind me.
Sailors do, right?
I had my first drink of rum at 9 to take the chill out of you. That would give you a shot of rum in the wintertime.
So 14 years old, you've now been working on ships for 4 years at this point, right? Because you started when you were 10. But obviously you've been around boats your entire life. So what was the next step after this? After this picture is taken, what's the next thing that happens?
After that, I went to school for navigation and seamanship at night. Of course, we trained in the Sea Scouts for sailing, and we trained in rough water. And we had a converted lifeboat, two-masted. She carried a main top, foresail jib, mizzen and mizzen top. She had a lot of canvas, but she had tanks in her, waterproof tanks for flotation. So she was a real weather boat. So we really learned rough water sailing. And we steered with a tiller, not with a wheel. And we did very well. We were the only Sea Scouts in Galway in the British Isles and Ireland, where the only seascouts had 2 boats. We built the second boat, it was a sloop. We built it ourselves. The local foundry loaned us ladles for the lead keel, but we did everything ourselves.
And what was your time like with the Merchant Marines? So after a little while, you get in there, and you just told me a story actually off camera about going to Normandy and that kind of lifestyle. Tell me a little bit of what was that like being a Merchant Marine?
For me, the war was over, 1946. When I went into Normandy soon after the war, I seen the devastation there. But don't forget, for the Irish Merchant Marine, now that we're neutral, we had to get our own ships. We had to scrounge in every country of the world to get our own ships. And in 1939, Irish shipping was formed. But we had the men and the manpower and the know-how to man these ships. Though we were flying, the Irish tricolour was painted on the bow, amidships on the side, and on our quarter towards our stern, the Irish flag, on top side on the pilot house. But they got it from both sides. They got it from the British by aircraft, and they got it from the Nazis by U-boats. And there's a book called The Long Watch, written by the first Commodore, Frank Ford, was the first Commodore of Irish shipping, and he wrote The Long Watch, and it tells it all. We lost a lot of ships and a lot of men World War II. Excuse me, I'm on the trawlers. If I was old enough, I'd be on one of those ships. But my neighbors were all on those ships. And I always remember the mailman on a bicycle with the telegrams. He was nicknamed Bad News. He never came with good news. Because they always came home without announcing their arrival to surprise their families. But when the telegram came, it was always bad news.
Yeah, so I mean, just a devastating time. Obviously, to live through that and to be through that is why you guys are considered the greatest generation, right?
Well, what happened was, even though Ireland, the Irish Republic, Belfast was still under the British flag. Ulster was at war, so the Luftwaffe came up our coast at night time and bombed Belfast and the shipyards, because that's where the Titanic was built. So nightly it was bombed, but our fire departments in the Irish Republic, our ambulances, our nurses and doctors went up there, because these are our Irish people. They're not British people, although the British said they're British, but they were Irish, and they're our countrymen. So our ambulances and fire departments would go up there to put the fires out and do whatever they could to help those. There was only 4 air raid shelters in all of the north of Ireland, only 4.
So this is something that is so true in Ireland, is you guys have a lot of pride, not just in your land and in the Ireland itself as a country, but there's a ton of pride amongst the Irish as a group of people, and that's just, that story kind of hits home there, right?
Well, we're known as the Fighting Irish, not that we fight amongst each other. We've always fought every country's battles but our own. The most decorated serviceman in the United States was Audie Murphy, and the very first casualty of World War II was Butch O'Hare. They call O'Hare Airport out there. And he took on a Japanese warship, and a lot of said it was a suicide attack. He knew he was going to die, but he took him on, and he became a hero. And of course, you had the Sullivan brothers. the 5 brothers that were lost on the, I forget the name of the ship now, but it will come to me. But they made a movie of that.
We'll look it up for you. It's the Sullivan Brothers.
I don't know if it was the Eskimo.
Light cruiser USS Juneau were all killed in action in its sinking on November 13th, 1942.
They were all lost.
Yeah. So before we get to your trip to America, we'll talk a little bit. You just told me a story. I recently went to hurling and got to experience that. My girlfriend, my significant other, is she's Irish, and you found that out, and I got a nice little note from you and some different things because you found out my girlfriend was Irish. But we went to hurling the other day, and that was something you played as a kid, but then also you got to enjoy one of the championship games while you were in service.
Yesterday, I watched the game between Cork and Limerick and the different teams, and I haven't seen a hurling game in almost 50 years because I was immigrated. And I remember reading about the American Army stopped in Shannon, and they went to a hurling game. And they were amazed when they seen this game being played. They were so amazed they formed their own team, and they're one of the top teams to this day in the United States. And they're based in New Hampshire. And here am I, watching this game, and I thought at the time I was in Normandy, and the game were coming on. And it broke my heart that I couldn't go to the games. Here I am stuck on this ship miles from my home. And that weekend, my skipper came back from the shipping agent, and he said, "You won't believe this, but we're going not to Singapore or Thailand or anywhere else. We're going to Ireland. But not alone are we going to Ireland, we're going to Dublin, where the games are." And I thought he was having me on. And we docked Dublin on a Friday morning. The ship wouldn't be worked till the following Monday. I called my girlfriend, Winnie, in Galway, and my brother-in-law, and my future brother-in-law, and my sister, Rita. And they came up to the games. But not alone did we get the best seats, we're right behind the Galway goalmouth. And I shouted out to the captain of the team, and he looked around and he said, "Wow, Patrick, what are you doing here? We thought you were miles away on the ocean." And the icing on the cake was we had some crew members from Wexford, and Galway is playing Wexford for the All-Ireland hurling, and it's like the Super Bowl over there. And we beat Wexford by 4 goals. Wow, what a time,
It is an outstanding sport. It's one that, if you haven't seen it yet, if you haven't gone out and seen it at Fenway played, it is an outstanding sport. It's very, very cool. But it inspired you. Again, we're talking a little bit about what inspires you to write. And what I thought was really interesting about your story is you said it inspired you to write a poem, The Iron Hand, right? The Iron...
Sean Duggan and his brother, the whole family, Seamus, Sean, Jimmy, the whole family were into hurling. And for his 90th birthday, I thought about him. He was known as the man with the iron hand. He could stop a ball in the goal mouth. He was the captain and he was the goalie. He could stop a ball at 100 miles an hour with a bare hand. And I gave him the nickname, the man with the iron hand. And I thought of that, and I wrote the poem, The Man with the Iron Hand. And I sent it to him for his 90th birthday.
Now, so we'll skip forward a little bit. So you get to the United States, and you actually have a connection to here, to Medfield TV. You met somebody, Jack Peterson, which we are in the Jack Peterson studio currently right now. And you brought with us a little picture. Can you tell me a little bit about this picture and meeting Jack and how that all worked? Yeah, it's just...
Ishka.
Ishka, yeah.
The reason how I met Jack, you want to know how I met Jack?
How you met Jack, it would be good.
I went to the 4th of July celebration in Plymouth Harbor where I live, with my wife and Evelyn. I was wearing my Merchant Marine skipper's cap. They dedicated all these tunes and songs to the armed forces, but the Merchant Marine was never mentioned. And it kind of bothered me. And I looked at Evelyn and I said, I'm going up there at intermission and I'm going to talk to Maestro. And I'm going to ask him if he ever heard of the Merchant Marine. She said, you can't do that. She said, there's thousands of people here. Forget it, don't go. I said, I'm going, and I went. And Maestro is up on the stand there with his baton, and he looks down at this little Irishman, and he said, you got a question? I said, yes. Did you ever hear of the Merchant Marine? And he said, the Merchant Marine. Now, what did they do? I said, they lost more men than the combined forces of these United States and never got the recognition for it. That's what they did. Why, he said, they don't even have a song or a tune. I said, you could try Roger Whittaker's Last Farewell. He said, let me put that in the book. So he did. So I was a little happy about that. I got back, and my wife, Evelyn, looked at me and said, I can't believe you did that. I said, I feel a lot better now. But I wasn't better. That night I thought about it. I got out of bed at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I wrote The Sailor's Grave. I went to Staples, where Staples in Plymouth that does most of my printing, and I had to get a folder, and I went down one of the aisles for the folder. When I came back, there was a big young man, like a football player, very athletic looking. And he said to me, who wrote that poem? I said, I did. He said, I want it. I said, what do you mean you want it? He said, I want to buy it. I said, it's not for sale. He said, I want that poem. And he got a little loud. And people were looking like, and I'm looking up at him, and my war cry as a young merchant mariner was, little rivers sink big ships. And I said, no, don't get mad. Gentle when stroked, fierce when provoked. So I said, why would you want that poem? He said, my dad was a merchant mariner in World War II, and I want to give it to my dad. He said, Veterans Day is coming up. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I said, I will send it to your dad. He said, hang on a minute. And he took out a roll of bills. He said, you name it. I want that poem. I said, it's not for sale. He said, but I want it. I said, but it's not for sale. He said, I said, give me your father's address and I will write and send it to him. A week later, I get a call, could you come to the Mass Maritime Academy? We received the poem, and we want to see you the first of the month, the first Sunday of the month, at the Harrington Building at the Academy, and be there by 1 o'clock. I said, okay. I got down on that Sunday. I got there at 1:45. And when I sat in the car, I said, oh my God, who was I to see? I never got the guy's name. I forget. What am I going to do? If I go back to Plymouth and come back again, I'd be too late. But I seen people going in, and I followed them in. And there's 3 desks in a row, and in the middle desk, the man looked at me, he said, "Are you Patrick?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Take a seat. The meeting is about to start." So they had a moment of silence, allegiance to the flag. And the next thing I heard, "Would our honored guests arise and identify yourself?" So I'm looking around at all these people. You know, it's a big auditorium. The Admiralty building is quite a place.
And you're thinking, I wonder who the honored guests are today, right?
Yeah, I see this long table with all kinds of goodies on it and drinks and everything. And I'm looking around, and then I look towards the desk, and the man in the middle desk is going, and he's pointing to the podium. So, oh my God, it's me, the one. So I got up, I said, "I'm Patrick Conneely, formerly of the Irish Merchant Marine, the British Merchant Marine, and the American Merchant Marine. And I'll explain the British part later." And they all started to laugh. And anyhow, long story short, this man came over to me and he introduced himself as Jack Peterson and introduced me to Roger Hardy. And he said, "We love your background, we love your poems, but we love your brogue even more." I said, "I do not have a brogue." And he said, "Excuse me?" I said, "I got an Irish accent." I said, "I looked it up in the English, and I emphasized English dictionary, and it said brogue, organic impediment in the tongue. Damned if I got an organic impediment in my tongue. I got an Irish accent." And he said, "Well, whoa, we want you to join our chapter." I joined that chapter, and every week I would have a poem for the Merchant Marine. It would be raffled off. The money went back into the American Merchant Marine Fund. Jack Peterson, as kind as he was, we became very good friends. We were both advocates for the recognition of the Merchant Marine. And some people used to call us Roger Hardy, Patrick Conneely, Jack Peterson, the 3 Musketeers. And we had a lot of laughs, and we had a lot of memories, and that was my introduction to Jack Peterson and Roger Hardy.
And you've been on the station before. Jack has interviewed you, not in this studio. This is a new one for you, but back at the old studio. We currently air that show every now and then. But Jack had you on his show back then too.
Yes, he did. He was very kind to. I got to tell you something funny about that. I've been to dinner with him. We were mates at the Mass Maritime. I met some of his friends. I was invited to be a guest speaker for the recognition of the Merchant Marine at the Veterans Post here in Medfield. And one Veterans Week, he said to me, "Patrick, would you do some poems for the veterans, for Veterans Day?" He said, "We'd love to have you on the show." I said, "All right, let me think about it." He said, "Never think about it, we want you." So that day, I get to the studio, Jack is in his chair, he rigged me up with the mic, and then he looked at the cameras, where everything was set to go, and he said, "And our guest today is Patrick Conneely." And I'm looking at the #1 camera and I'm going, and Dee Dee, the director there, came running out saying, "Why are you throwing karate chops at our #1 camera?" I said, my name is Patrick Conneely, not Patrick Conneely.
It completely changed the whole thing there.
Yes.
It made you Italian. Made you an Italian dessert.
And I looked towards Jack Peterson, and he's laying over on the starboard side with his hand over his face, like the kid that was caught with his hands in the cookie jar. But we had a good laugh over that.
That's a great story. So let's talk a little bit about your poems and what we're doing is you gave me this great book, and honestly I loved going through it. Like I said, I sat down with my girlfriend and we reread a few of these together, and I mean they're beautiful poems that you put together. How is it that people can see your poems and get in touch with this book too?
My poems can be reached through theirishskipper.com on Facebook. And I haven't really seen it myself, but my daughter handles some of my publications, my daughter Kathy, and they can reach me through the Facebook.
So through Facebook, they can reach you that way. I have up your website actually right here, and that's theirishskipper.com. There's a video as well. I'll click on that. We'll see what that's. Oh, so here's you being interviewed by Jack Peterson is right on the website. The Plymouth looks like they interviewed you, and you have also a speech. So you go around and you're asked to read your poems in a lot of different places.
Yes, I like to share my poems with people. When I was a contractor, I took a shore job and I hated it. But I knew rigging, I knew painting, I knew refinishing, you name it, structural work, my background. And not alone that, my company used to repair yachts when they were wooden ships then. Before they had fiberglass trees, you know. And I started going to I used to work in some nursing homes. I was in shut-in people, and I didn't like the setting chairs, and they were like lost souls. And I thought maybe, just maybe, if I went there and recited some poems, it would give them comfort and something to look forward to, and with a little humor as well. And I started to do this, and it was very, very well received by a lot of people. There was one poem that I thought it might have got somebody upset, because I wrote Mother England. And my wife asked me, and my wife Evelyn asked me to write that poem, because when I was a young merchant mariner, I joined a British ship in Dublin. We went to Belfast, and it was just after the war. You had to have identification to get coupons to get food. And my book had all my seat time in it, had my picture. It was issued by the Irish Ministry of Transport, and I handed it over. Now, this is a British ship out of Glasgow, Scotland, and some of the crew were Irish. And when they came back, the steward came back, he handed everyone back the book. Now, your book was like a passport, had your picture, your fingerprints, and your seat time. I said, where's my book? He said, this is not England, this is not Wales or Scotland, this is the north of Ireland. I said, so? He said, your license was issued by the Irish Ministry of Transport in the south. They do not recognize the Irish Republic, they do not recognize your license, they don't want you on the ship. So where does that leave me? I said, I want my book. I can't give it to you. I said, why not? He said, they dumped it in the harbor. I said, they destroyed my book. He said, I'm sorry, but that's the way it is here. So the skipper came out and he said, what's going on here? And I told him. He said, I'm not leaving you on the beach, lad. They will not beat you up. They will kill you. And it's happened before in Belfast, in this harbour. I would not have it on my conscience. And this old Scottish skipper said, he came from the Hebrides, the islands. He said, I'm resigning you on the ship. And you're going to sail whether they like it or not. And I sailed. And I know he saved my life. And I got thinking about it, but they sent me on a new book. I applied to the Registry of Shipping, and the Registry of Shipping is in Cardiff, Wales, and both for Ireland and all of Britain. And when they sent me back the book, it said, born New Docks, Galway, nationality British. And I went mad. I'm Irish, not British. I protested to the British government. I got no sight. I spoke with the tugboat skipper at Belfast. We were friends. He said, Patrick, don't you know what's going on here? They got 2.5 million native Irish squeezed into one corner. You can't have a civil service job. You can't work in the shipyard where the Titanic was built unless they give you a job sweeping the floor. He said, all these restrictions against 2.5 million people. I said, they can't do that. He said, they did it to you, didn't they? I said, yes. He said, would you become our PR man for the north of Ireland? And I did. He said, you travel on the ships. Tell the world out there what's going on in this part of the island of Ireland. And I did. I ended up on Coast to Coast television, both my wife and I. We both were on the front page of the Sunday Globe. And in our business, somebody had our pictures cut out of the Boston Sunday Globe, and somebody wrote underneath it, rabble rousers. We laughed about it. But I didn't know I ended up in the British computer. When my dad died in England, who fought for the English and fought against them in the rebellion. He was a gun runner, skippered a gun running boat, ship. Anyhow, my dad died in England, and I retired there in England. And I went to bury my dad, and my luggage didn't come off the carousel. So I went up to the desk and I asked, where my luggage was, and they said, fill out the de-embarkation card. I said, I did that on the plane before we landed. Well, they said, you'll fill out another one, and I didn't like the way they said it. And they went in the back room, and it was a long time in there, and it was Sunday morning, and it's snowing. He came back out, I gave him the card, I said, now where's my luggage? He said it was misplaced. I said, the plane didn't land anywhere over the Atlantic. How could it be misplaced? He said, I said it was misplaced. And I had a cold hand at my heart. And I said, there's something up. I got to my brother's house where I was never, I had a map to get there. I went out and it's snowing, and there's only one taxi. I said, I want to go to this English village. He said, no can do, Sahib. I said, why not? City limits only. So I took some money out and I said, how much? Oh, okay, Sahib. So Sahib is driven to my brother's house. He said, where's your luggage? I said, I don't know. He said, what did you put down as nationality? I said, what are you talking about? He said, what did you write down as nationality? I said, American. And he said, place born? I said, the Irish Republic. Oh, he said, you shouldn't have done that. But I said, that's where I was born. He said, you should have said Ireland, and they wouldn't know whether it was north or south. Mm. He said, you shouldn't have done that. Now, my brother was older than I was. He said, let me make a phone call. I don't know who he called, but he came back. He said, your luggage is impounded. You're in the British computer. Now, the hair started to rise on the back of my neck. Here we go again. I got back to the States. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm writing a poem for somebody. my wife came out, she said, it's 3 o'clock, well, you're writing a poem. You write something for the English or the British or whatever you want to call them. But that anger you got in you will destroy you. I don't want to see this happen. Now you write a poem. I know you can do it. I'm going to check back at 4 o'clock. Then you better have a poem written. So I thought about it. And you want me to recite it?
Sure.
I sat there and I thought about them dumping my merchant marine license, my Irish license. I thought of all the things happening to my countrymen in the north of Ireland. They brought the Scots English in there, took over their lands, made tenant farmers, all of them, second-class citizens. All this ran through my mind, and this is what I wrote. Mother England, known throughout the world as the bitch and harlot of the North Sea, what I ask of you, did Celtic Ireland ever, ever do to thee? You made our beautiful rivers run red with our blood. You murdered and pillaged every hamlet and town, enslaved my people on prison ships and in the colonies in the name of your bloody crown. Did you not know we Celts would prevail, survive your bondage, your chains, your cruelty? For we are the Gael. You had stolen our waters, our mountains, our valleys and streams, our hopes, our culture, and most of all, of our dreams. And when my wife came out, she said, did you write the poem? I said, yes. She said, well, what's the title? I said, Mother England. Oh, she said, see, now, that is beautiful. Till I recited it.
Yeah. I mean, so these poems and more are in this book. You have so many poems that you've written, a lot that aren't in this book. But tell me once again, how do people get in contact with you? How do people see your poems and the different things you've written?
Well, to contact me, as I said, the only way I've got is the Facebook. Mm-hmm. And theirishskipper.com. Hopefully, maybe through going to assisted living, people, when I recite, will order books through my presentations at various nursing homes, maybe radio sometimes. Actually, I was on Irish radio last summer, Galway FM. I didn't even know I was going there. They kidnapped me. The heritage people, they didn't tell me where they were driving me. And the next thing, we were in the studios of Galway FM and introduced me to the radio people and had me recite poems on Irish radio. But I tried to go to veterans posts and do my poems there. And I find that people and grown men get very emotional when I recite sometimes. And my poems seem to get across to people, whether it's losing a loved one, sickness or death. I had one man that's his company is in the space program, and he gave his mother a copy of my poems. And I was working on my daughter's boat on the Galway Girl one day, and the owner of R&R Marine in Pembroke, him and I are very good friends. Actually, I wrote the Marine for him and for the Marines. He lost half of his platoon in Vietnam. He's badly wounded. To this day, they're still taking shrapnel out of his body. And he asked me to write a poem and he says, somebody wants to see you. And this man came to me and he said, I bought a book for you about a year ago. And he said, I don't know if you remember me. He said, my business is in Plymouth. We were in the stainless steel business. We work with the space program. But he said, my mother was very sick. And she asked, nightly I used to read your poems to her. And now she was very sick. And he said, before she died, she said, I want the Irish Skipper's book, and I want you to read some of the poems for me.
Wow.
And he said, I want to tell you, he said, the comfort your poems brought to my mother. And he thanked me.
And that's beautiful. And so the two best ways to get in touch with you is on Facebook, The Irish Skipper, and then also your website, theirishskipper.com. And so I invite people to check those out. But that's all the time we have for today. And Patrick, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your stories.
Well, I want to thank you, Brett, ever so much having this old Irishman here today. And I know Jack Peterson will be proud of you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Very much.
And thank you to our listeners for checking this out today, and I hope you guys come back for the next episode of A Discussion With.
Good afternoon. This is the Irish Skipper, Patrick Conneely, formerly of the Irish Merchant Marine, the British Merchant Marine, the American Merchant Marine. And this afternoon, I would like to share with you a poem called The Street of Regret. I wrote this poem for a young yachtsman. He had a drinking and a drug problem, big time. They wanted to throw him out of the yacht club, and I went to bat for him. I said, he needs help. And I took him under my wing, and I got him into a program. To this day, he's got 15 years straight sobriety and free of drugs. And I was able to see him grow back and enjoy life once more instead of jumping from one cell to another in the terrible whirlpool and whirlwind of alcoholism and drug addiction. So I wish to share this poem with you, which I wrote for him. On his first year of sobriety, he said, Patrick, would you write me something? I said, like what? Oh, he said, you write great poems. Would you write me something? I said, let me think about it. And he was working on my home at the time. And I said, next Saturday, I will have a poem for you. And I remembered what he always said, I regret. I regret the loss of my love, my girlfriend, my friends. I regret the loss of my business, my home. Everything was regret. So it was easy to give the poem the title, The Street of Regret. So stand by, here we go. Oh yes, I too have staggered down the boulevard of broken dreams, better known as the street of regret, at times trying to remember, and at times trying to forget. 1,000 drunken nights, the lockups and the fights, stumbling from cell to cell in my own private hell. Have I been cursed by a widow's curse that life has passed me by? The wife that I lost, the home that I lost, perhaps are the things that make me cry. Or is it that curse, that Celtic curse, Ishkabaha, better known as whiskey, that drives most men insane, that end up a vegetable where once there was a brain? My very soul cries out in pain as I look for some brighter years when I was a lad and sailed away from Galway, my home, and a harbour filled with tears. Thank you. This is the Irish skipper again. Good afternoon. I wish to share this poem with you, which meant a lot to me. It's been 10 years that my eldest girl, Mary T, as we call her, Mary Teresa, passed away with cancer. She saw as a little girl, she always fished with me since she was 4 or 5 years old. And we had a lot of good years together out on the boat and sailing. I taught her to sail. But I wanted to share this poem with you that I wrote for her in her memory. So stand by, please. I call it Memory Lane. Remember when we fished side by side, just you and I, leaning into the wind on early morning tide, catching our first glimpse of sunrise at the dawning of another day, hoping and praying to catch that big one, the one that got away. If only we could turn back the clock, remembering the cry, fish on, hosing down the boat, icing down the fish just before we dock. Oh, what fond memories we shared, Mary T, you and me, walking on God's wave-washed beach, looking out to sea, counting footprints in the sand, father and daughter walking once more, arm in arm, and hand in hand. Thank you. Good afternoon, this is the Irish skipper. I wish to share this short poem with you this fall day. I call it Catherine Rose. It's for my second oldest girl, who's been with me now for many years. She's my guiding light and my best friend. So I'd like to share this short poem with you. Her name was Catherine Rose. At last you've reached the springtime of your years. Today you said a fond farewell to childhood's ways and cares. You have started on a plotted course, a woman fine to be. I wish you well. I wish you love on life's uncertain sea. All the best. Love you. Your dad. This is the Irish skipper again. As a PS on that poem that I wrote, Catherine Rose. For 2 years, I was out of work with a ruptured disc. The bills were piling up. My daughter was about to graduate, and my mind was in a turmoil. It wasn't so much the pain I was in, it was the mental pain that I wanted to give this wonderful girl a new car or a trip to Ireland or something, but I was handicapped and I was devastated. And my wife knew how I felt, and then she said to me, why don't you write her a poem? And that's what I wrote, Catherine Rose. Thank you. If you are interested in my poems or my book of poems, you will find me on Facebook.com. You can find me on theirishskipper.com. Oh yes, I too have staggered down the boulevard of broken dreams, better known as the street of regret, at times trying to remember, and at times trying to forget. 1,000 drunken nights, the lockups and the fights, stumbling from cell to cell in my own private hell? Have I been cursed by a widow's curse that life has passed me by?
The preceding was a production of Medfield TV.